I have added the switch component along with the text which describes what mode user selected. In manual mode, if user wants to get a new quote, he needs to push the button or get a quote button. In auto mode, I will launch a timer and user will get a new quote based on the interval that I'm gonna set. There are various switches available created by React Native community. I have decided to use just a regular switch component imported from React Native. And while this switch is not really stylable, as we can see in the documentation, there is not even style property for it. I found an article which explains how to make it bigger, and this is exactly what I did. Basically, I increased the scale.
So I added it over here. I increased it by 1.5. By 1.5, and this is the size that I feel like comfortable to press by the finger.
My choice to highlight background of the box that holds those two elements, the text and the switch, was based on better visibility, and exactly the same choice was made for the colors of the switch and the text for better visibility. When user toggles the switch, I handle this event with switch handler function. So for now, when the switch toggled, it changes the state of switch value, and as a callback, I'm running the text animation. In my next task, I'm going to be adding automation, so when the user toggles to auto mode, the timer will be launched and it will be selecting quotes automatically. As well as I'm going to be graying out the get a quote button so the user will not be able to press it. In my original application, I had an animation added to that button, so when user would press on it, it will scale down, making an effect as it's going down, and then scale out when it's going up. But in this case, I'm not gonna do it, just to keep it simple. When user presses get a quote button, switch handler function runs. In the callback of set state, I would check switch value, and if it's true, I would gray out the get a quote button and run the function quote auto timer. If switch value is false, that means this is a manual mode. I would clear the timer if one was started before and respectively restore the ability to press on get a quote button. Function quote auto timer launches the timer, which runs with set interval, which is 12 seconds in my case, and it continuously calls start quote animations function. Interesting to point out, I also called start quote animations before the timer is launched. The reason for it is once the user toggles the switch, start quote animation function will run immediately, and the second and continuous ones will be running on interval. Now if I switch to auto mode, the timer starts running, the button is disabled. Currently I set to speed it up interval to 6 seconds, but everything seems to be working as intended. Once I go ahead and switch back to manual mode, this block is going to be running, which will clear the timer and re-enable the button. And once I change that state, I pass it as a prop to the button component, so it changes the background and changes the text. One thing I wanted to point out, the interval variable is placed outside the component. Anytime one component is being mounted or unmounted, all the variables that are declared inside the component will have to be recreated, reinitialized, and the JavaScript will have to go ahead and allocate the memory, place the value, and so forth. So this potentially may slow down the application. The better way, and this is how I like it, if the variable is not being changed, I put it somewhere in the file as a const and just import it to the component that's needed it when I needed it. So that's it. That's just